Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by Synergy Performance. Our mission with this podcast is to explore the topics of growth, performance, and personal development through conversations with individuals pursuing success and by using current events in business and sports to discuss strategies on how you can grow into the individual that you want to be.
All right, everybody, welcome back to The Growth Project. My name is Cory Shaffer, and as I said on last week's podcast, what we're going to do this week is continue with my conversation with former professional baseball player Michael Roth. Again, Michael is a local product to South Carolina, played baseball at the University of South Carolina, and then just finished up his professional career. He's made the transition out of baseball and into his second career. So what you'll hear today is a little bit more about how he defines mastery, how he defined it as a player, and maybe now that he's transitioned out of baseball, what mastery looks like. So I'm excited for everybody here, the second part of this podcast. Michael has quite a bit of insight, a very thoughtful guy, so I hope you enjoy. So let's go back just for a quick second, because this to me is one of the more interesting pieces of what you said. Like, everybody's heard of visualization, a lot of athletes do it, but part of what you were describing, which I think is really interesting, and I've always been the same kind of way, was thinking not just about the positive outcome and what am I going to say to the media, but also almost thinking through the negative outcome. Why do you think you did that? What was the benefit of thinking through, what if I pitch poorly?
I think the benefit at the time, it's hard because I think about what I know now versus what I was thinking then. And I think at the time I was straight up just felt fear. There was some fear in there. Yeah. And that fear of like, okay, how would I react? Like, how could I?
Yeah, but by thinking through the response,
right,
doesn't that diffuse some of the fear?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
And like what we talked about earlier when we were saying, okay, the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
You live and you feel that worst case scenario. If you're visualizing it, then you feel some of those things. You feel like you hear it.
Right.
You hear like people cussing at you and booing at you. You taste it, like you taste that feeling in your mouth. Where you're like, where it's like,
yeah, no, I got you.
And so you feel all those senses, and I think you start to realize, okay, it's not that bad. Like, I can live with it.
But that's it, right? Part of it, it's almost like, hey, this is a realistic possibility.
Right.
Like, I could go out there and get shelled tomorrow, right? But if I'm at least preparing that response ahead of time,
yeah,
right? Like, I've dealt with it. Nothing that I face in that moment is going to harm me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Certainly.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to go back to that, because I think it's almost like a negative visualization.
Yeah.
Right? Something I've learned a lot just through philosophy, like the benefit of feeling prepared then when life throws something unexpected at you. It's just like, well, you know what? I've thought through this.
Yeah, right? And it's like, I can live with it.
I can handle whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And I used to, there were times that I would be on the mound and like, there would almost be times, and this is so interesting that I think about it now, like I would have thrown like 5 good innings, and I'd go out, and I always used to kind of say take like a deep breath before I'd step on the mound and like pray and think. And sometimes I would be like, okay, like I know I'm going to face some adversity at some point. And sometimes that was like having a guy on second base with nobody out.
Sure.
And so my thought was always, how do I want to react to this? Like, I always want to make sure that I'm reacting well, you know? Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm pitching well. It means that I'm handling it well.
Yeah, but that's the perfect example of I'm going to control what I can control here.
Yeah.
And back then, again, it probably wasn't even a super conscious thought process on your part.
I had no clue.
It was just something that you were, for whatever reason, like naturally doing, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So I think looking back now, I mean, to me, that's the funnest part of these conversations, is because we see somebody who was very successful at what he did for a long time, and now to look back and be like, yeah, I actually did have a pretty good mental game, right? Yeah. It wasn't even something you were consciously working on at the time, but like, I think that's great. It is, hey, I could be coasting, but I'm always prepared for the fact that adversity could come at any time.
Right.
Yeah. And part of that probably kept you on your toes a little bit too.
Oh yeah, because you're always feeling that anxiety. but it's a good anxiety.
Exactly,
it's
right. So even when you described that from the beginning, like that night before, feeling the butterflies, you said from the start, right, like in a good way. And that's the key, because everybody feels it, but some people think about it and they're like, oh man, this means I'm ready and I'm excited. Like, sure, there's a little fear, right? But a lot of other people think, uh-oh, this means I'm nervous. This means I'm not ready. What if? And they start playing that game. So
yeah, it's the two different types of stress. Like, you don't want to feel distressed, right? Like, you want to feel, is it eustress?
It's just your interpretation of the event, right? And so feeling excited by it, your body still has a strong physiological response, but mentally, you're prepared.
Right.
Okay. All right, we could talk about this stuff forever, but let's move on. So you go on to kind of kill it at South Carolina. Things went very well for you there for a couple years, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk just, I guess, kind of briefly, deciding to forego signing after your junior year. What went into that decision?
That was an interesting summer. Well, that whole year was really interesting. I always wanted to play professionally. I go into my junior year not thinking I would be a Friday night starter, end up being a Friday night starter, have a really, really good year. We win the national championship, and teams started to talk to me a lot more as the year went on because of the way that I was pitching. And earlier in that year, I was like, man, if somebody offered me like $100K, I'd sign. And then as the year went on, for some reason, I guess I thought so highly of myself that I was like, I probably wouldn't sign for $200K. And then as a draft came, I only talked to a few teams. And one scout called me for the White Sox. And during our interviews, I didn't like him. I thought he was I just didn't like the scout. I thought he was just, I don't know. And he called me, and we had a conversation, and he said something, and I just was like, all right, if this is the guy that they're having represent him, I don't even want to play for this team. But so I just told him, I was like, well, I just ignored his call on the draft day. But I ended up falling to the 31st round. And a couple teams called early, like the Cubs called me and asked me what I wanted to sign for, and that was always like their game. They're like, hey, what's your number? And I just told them, hey, I don't have a number. Like, just draft me where you think I'm worth, and we'll talk from there. And I get it. They're in a business, and so that was my way of doing it. I wasn't represented by anybody at the time. So when I got drafted, we go on and win the College World Series. I was in the International School of Business. In order to graduate with my degree, I had to do a study abroad. Obviously, as an athlete, you can't study abroad during the year. So in July, I was going to Spain to do my study abroad. And we won on a Tuesday night. We flew back on a Wednesday. I had a flight on a Friday to go to Spain. On Thursday, I was driving from Columbia to Greenville to leave. I had to unpack my stuff because I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I unpacked my stuff. On the way home, I called the Indians, and they were like, because they drafted me in the 31st round, which I was excited. I was like, man, that's cool. Like, I realized a dream if I wanted to.
Right.
And they called me, and they're like, hey, we heard you're going to Spain. I was like, yeah. I'll be there for 5 weeks. I get back on August 8th or something. I was like, so that'll give us a week to negotiate. I was like, so that way you guys can figure out how much money you'll have left to pay me, is really like what I told them. And so I knew I wanted to go. I knew I had the time built in, at least to sign if I wanted to sign. Yeah. But I think I knew what I wanted to do prior to that point. One, I was kind of nervous about professional baseball as far as if I would enjoy it. Like the college aspect with your team and your buddies, and winning was the whole purpose. Like, that competitiveness was something I always loved about baseball. Like, always wanting to win. I was worried that college baseball or that professional baseball wouldn't be that way.
Right.
Two, there was a guy, Brian Busher. He was our student coach that year. And he had just finished his career playing, and he played for, gosh, I don't know. He had a good professional career. I mean, probably like parts of 5 years in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
So, a well-established big league career. And we were talking a lot that year because, we're always on the bench and just chatting. He was like, man, this has been the hardest year of my life. I have a child. My wife's going back to work. I'm not making any money. I'm back in school because he had to go finish his degree. He's like, it's just hard because I'm like 30 or whatever he was. I think he was like 32. He's like, I'm in 32 and I'm back in college with like 21-year-olds and 20-year-olds. So I think that had a significant impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
Like thinking, man, if I leave, I'll then have to come back to get my degree. Would I come back? What would all that look like? So I think it was just a combination of like being a little bit nervous of what that future was and hearing it from a former player who was going through it kind of led me to want to stick around.
Well, it's interesting too, though, because part of it to me, I think, is we had the other Michael.
Yeah.
The other Michael's still there, right?
Exactly.
So, and then if you trace that back, it's like I faced some adversity and kind of got punched in the face a little bit as a freshman.
Yeah.
And it forced me to kind of open myself up to new things, right? Michael 2.
Yeah, Michael 2.0, like wanted to go to Spain and like sip sangria
but
and
you
salsa.
said like I got more social, I got more involved in school. Like you probably started to take that piece, maybe not necessarily more seriously, but as a real alternative, right? And so it's just it's really interesting to see how that story pieces together and then how it influenced your decision to some degree.
Yeah, and I remember I went over to Spain and was just having a blast. Like they call it studying abroad, but it definitely wasn't much studying. I mean, I got college credit for a windsurfing class, so like I had a blast and learned so much, just like life. I mean, that was the first time I was ever out of the country. I don't count Niagara Falls because it doesn't count, but first time I was truly like out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Spain, France, other parts of like Mallorca, and so it was just cool to like get outside of my bubble that I was used to of just like baseball.
Right.
Like that's a great point. And there was a night that I was in Mallorca. We were traveling with some of my buddies that I made over there, and I think I was texting. This was back when we had BlackBerry, so I was BBMing someone, and my buddy was like, "Hey, I'm coming back to school," and he announced it on Twitter, and I was like, "Oh, sweet!" Like it was my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "This is great," and then my other buddy texted me like it was the night before. Our other buddy texted me, and he was already graduating, but he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna come back and do a grad assistant for the football team or something." So I was all our roommates like staying together. I was like, I'm coming back too, and I already knew that I was. And so when I landed, my first phone call I got was from the Indians, and we met and we talked, and there was probably a number that would have gotten me to leave school, a monetary number, but at the same time I think that was the best thing for me to go back to school, like physically to be prepared, mentally to have my degree. That's something that to know that at any point in my baseball career, in the past 7 years, I could have walked away and gotten a job easier because I didn't have to go back to school. That was just something that I would never want to give up. And there were plenty of guys that I played with that didn't have degrees, and it's a game changer when you're talking
for sure
the next part of your life.
Right. Okay, we're gonna bounce around a little bit here just for the sake of time. So the theme that we have here on the Growth Project for the month of July is on mastery. I'm going to take this question in a couple of different ways. So we've talked some about your approach to baseball and your approach to pitching, but one, what did mastery mean to you as a player? And then maybe how has that shifted now post baseball?
Yeah, mastery as a player. So I always think about as a pitcher, you are who you are, right? Like you show up every day, you can we all have certain strengths. I had certain strengths as a pitcher. I wasn't going to throw 100 miles an hour. I knew I wasn't going to throw 95. But I had other strengths that made me an effective pitcher. So I knew what I was capable of. I knew my strengths and my weaknesses. The mastery part, was I always trying to throw harder? Certainly. Mm-hmm. Was I always trying to, make a curveball more crisp or my slider like harder and sharper? Certainly. But I think part of the mastery that I started to learn as a player was that at any given day, I would show up and I knew that I had these certain abilities to pull from. And, and say they're 10 abilities as a pitcher, or 10 like things that I could throw and things that I could do to keep hitters off of balance. Maybe one day I would show up and all 10 are working. Mm. But maybe the next day I show up and I've only got half. And so to me, the mastery was being able to put that together no matter what, because I still had to do my job.
Right.
And as a pitcher, as a starting pitcher in professional baseball, you get, in the minor leagues, you get probably 20, 22, 25 starts. Mm-hmm. The big leagues, like 30-ish. And so you're throwing once every 5 days. You don't have, it's not a ton of time, but out of those 20, 25 starts you get, you're probably going to feel like exceptional, like body-wise, mentally. You're only going to feel exceptional on like 5 of those days. Mm-hmm. And that's when you can just let it eat and you don't have to think. You just, right. Go. But the other days you have to piece together, because you're going to have like your A game, your B game, your C game, and sometimes your D game. But you still have to go out there and like do your job. Mm-hmm. So it was physical mastery each day, trying to pursue, improving those qualities. Mm-hmm. But also in game, knowing that you wouldn't have everyone to pull from, and how do you mentally deal with that? How are you okay with that?
Yeah.
And how do you make it to where you can still be a good player?
Right. So what I'm hearing, some of that is just like how do I compete with what I have?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mastery is the epitome of I've got to use what I got. Mm-hmm. Because if every day I just came out here and I had, let's say, all 10 of these abilities or qualities or characteristics or whatever, I mean, game would be a lot easier.
Oh yeah, yeah,
right,
for sure.
But no, I think it's a cool way of describing it, because you said, I mean, every day is different, and so that means it's a constant pursuit, because every day I have a different pool to draw, same pool, right, but the qualities are there in different ways. So now I think that's really interesting. What about now, though? So first, let's start with, what are you doing these days?
Yeah. A little bit of everything. I'm transitioned into commercial real estate, so commercial real estate brokerage. So focusing on, just investment properties, working with investors, users of commercial real estate, whether that's office or retail, mm-hmm. Type of properties. And I like that aspect. I like that job because it's a eat what you kill type job. Mm-hmm. I'm hunting, essentially. You're always looking for the next deal. You're looking for the next opportunity. So it's a job that I have to organize my life myself. Like no one's checking me in at work one day. It's something that I have to do myself, and which is good, because it's what I've been doing my whole life with mm-hmm. baseball. I also like it because you just have to piece things together. You get to be creative on how you structure a deal, or how you're always trying to present solutions. If someone needs space, or someone wants to buy this, or they have money to spend, you're trying to come up with a solution for them that makes sense. And that's the fun part. And there's an entrepreneurial spirit to it, to where, you're on your own, essentially. I work with 2 other guys on a team, but what we produce is what we produce for that year, you know, and so we can go and pursue whatever business we want. If we wanted to focus on a specific type of property, we can. Our firm allows us to do that. So it's very entrepreneurial in that you kind of chase the business that you want to chase.
Yeah.
And it's also given me a lot of insight to the businesses that are around town, you know, what people do to make money. It's incredible, like some of the niche market stuff that people are able to do and make a ton of money doing. So it's just intriguing to me to see all these types of businesses that I work with. And mastery now for me is a little bit different, but not entirely different, because each day I still wake up and I have, you know, what am I going to accomplish today? What do I need to accomplish today? Putting that structure in my life to where I can accomplish that, or I need to pursue, you know, these prospects or talk to these clients. But the mastery portion is really the mental fight to deal with some of these things, you know, and there's some days I wake up and there's like things that I dread on my to-do list. I'm like, gosh, I do not want to talk to that person. But those usually are the calls that I need to do first, because if I don't do those, they'll just hang over my head.
Right.
So mastery to me is still learning to structure my day, at least right now. But also like continuing to learn more from a real estate perspective, learning more on the industry side of it. And also, how can I continue growing just as an individual? You know, can I be a better husband? Can I be a better, you know, son? You know, at some point I would hope to have kids. So what kind of father can I be? And that's going to be each day. It's going to be did I do better than the last? And, you know, am I reacting at the same time? Did I react better this time? You know, my wife and I were talking this past weekend, and I brought something up that, you know, sometimes I just throw out these ideas. I'm like, well, maybe we should do this. And she takes a lot of what I say very seriously, and sometimes I'm like, well, I'm just like, you know, riffing ideas just here, spitballing, you know. And so she was like, well, you need to be careful sometimes, because I take it seriously. I'm like, okay, I get that. And so taking that in and being like, all right, well, I need to be more careful with how I present things, because if I just say, you know, we should go here for vacation or whatever it is, we should sell the house or we should do this, it needs to be more thought through. Or maybe I should just wait and be like, okay, should I? You know?
Right.
So some things like that.
No, but I mean, even your sort of career pursuits and how they've changed, I think I do see some of the baseball player in you still, right? So even the idea of real estate and what you're doing being kind of eat what you kill. Right. I mean, you're getting at the competitive aspect.
Certainly.
That's definitely within you, right?
Right.
And then even the entrepreneurial sort of business side of it, I think is just you get to use some creativity, right? That's a little bit of like, how do I want to attack this hitter? Yeah. Right? So I just, it's cool to see those parallels there. Yeah. Okay, how about, do you think some of the same characteristics and skills that helped you be successful in baseball help you achieve your goals now? And I kind of just commented on that, but what else would you add to that?
Definitely. What I learned on the baseball field for the last 20 plus years of my life, and even more so in the last 2, just going through what I, went through professionally, I've learned so much about myself and how I react to things, and I think that leads into and bleeds into this next part of my career, and it will continue to shape me and how I function throughout my life. The first part being competitive. I think I'm always going to have that competitive out, and that's just, or that competitive thing that I'm able to nurture somehow, and get that. the other thing too that I think about, the other thing that I think about baseball is let me go back. When I was in college, because I only threw once a week, I used to have like super intense bullpen sessions, and I would like almost be more intense in my bullpen, like getting mad about throwing a bad pitch, than in the game. And in the game, I was a lot more calm. And everyone always talks about like, you know, practice makes perfect, and the counter argument to that is like, no, perfect practice makes perfect. And I think if you're not training like you would training your body and your mind like you would play in a game, I think you're losing preparation. And so I did that a lot in college because that was like the thing that I needed to do because I was only pitching once a week.
Right.
And then when I wish I would have continued that in professional baseball, because I did at some points, but I didn't do it as much because I think that may have harmed me a little bit, because sometimes in games you try to click it up a notch and you're not there.
Yeah.
Or you're over, you know, like we said, we're on that fine line of like caring and not caring. So the same thing in like a real estate transaction. One of my business partners that I work with, he's been doing this for 30 years. And it's so interesting to get him into a meeting with a prospect or a client. And if they're going through a difficult, you know, trying to make a decision, he has this air of like, well, either you want to do the deal or you don't. And it's not like an arrogant thing, but it's almost like, hey, I don't care. But again, if they don't do the deal, we don't make any money. But he's like, you know, if it makes sense for you, then do it. If not, it's not a big deal. And it's like that. He plays a fine line of caring and not caring. And it's usually like, they're like, it gets them to the finish line where they're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Or, oh, yeah.
It's interesting, though, how you can observe that in somebody else, knowing that that was a quality, you know, as a baseball player that you definitely possessed, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like we could talk for a long time here, but let's kind of finish up here. Yeah, we'll do some rapid fire questions, and we'll plan part 2. All right, this one is just interesting to me. It's something that's in the media a lot today, so I want to hear your opinion. True or false? Major League Baseball juices today's baseballs, which has led to the surge in home runs and power numbers.
No doubt. I think the baseball is juiced for sure. Okay. And there was a study that kind of showed that they've made some changes to the baseball.
Yeah, but
definitely
commissioner won't say.
Right, and again, it's fine. I'm okay with it. Like, they want more home runs. I get it. They want to bring back, like, you know, the Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire years, which is great, but definitely true.
All right, the best pitch in baseball is
a strike.
A strike. Oh, wow. Okay. That wasn't what I was going for, but
definitely a strike.
All right, your favorite pitch to throw then?
Favorite pitch to strike?
No, I want to know, like,
honestly,
fastball,
sinker. Like,
sinker.
Yeah, two-seamer. There's nothing better than throwing a two-seamer and just like watching a guy roll over it and break his bat and yell a bunch of cuss words as he runs down the line.
The best venue or stadium I ever played in is
probably Fenway.
Really?
I got rocked there, but probably Fenway. I did strike out David Ortiz, but I got rocked by everybody else.
What was so great about it, though?
Just the history. I mean, well, Wrigley was really cool, too.
I was going to say, you pitched at Wrigley, right?
Yeah, Wrigley was awesome. And that was before they even added the screen in center field. So that was a really cool stadium, too. But, yeah, probably one of those two.
Okay. All right. If you could face one batter over the course of history of baseball, who would it be?
Derek Jeter. He was always my favorite player growing up. Yeah, I got optioned down when his retirement year. I got sent down the week before that we were supposed to go to the Yankees.
How would you have pitched Jeter?
Hard in.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he had that little inside out, he would yank his hands in. He probably,
hit a bloop single
in
right field.
Yeah, he probably would have like filleted, just yanked his hands in and hit it right over the second baseman's head.
Yeah.
Hard in.
All right, the person who has impacted me the most as a player is blank.
My dad, for sure.
Okay. Person who's impacted my life outside of baseball the most is?
My mom, yeah. She always tried to get me to have like Michael 2.0. She always wanted she wanted me to be like well-rounded and encouraged me to read and like do things. So she's, definitely her.
Okay. The book or books that have impacted me the most are?
It's probably The Obstacle is the Way is
Really?
probably one of the most impactful books. I feel like I never really started reading fact-based books like that, like philosophy, or I don't want to call them self-help, but fact-based books until the last couple of years. Obstacle is a Way, Ego's Enemy, The Alchemist was a good one, and there's some other business books in there that I really liked. I like Tim Ferriss, but some of those books are probably the best. Stoicism as a whole. I know that you love that stuff.
I do.
I like it. I think it's good. It's a good philosophy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Last one. Performance comes down to blank.
Competing.
How do you define competing?
Showing up every day and putting it on the line, like just going out there and just trusting your ability at that given moment.
I like it. All right, Michael, I appreciate you and your time. Thanks for being on the Growth Project. We will definitely plan a 2.0 here
for sure.
At some point, we gotta get more with Michael 2.0.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you soon. If you're interested in learning more about what we do, visit our website at synergyperformancesc.com. Join us next time for more relevant topics on The Growth Project.